And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thanks so much for joining us on another news review. And it's great to have a Welsh voice back with us. Been a while. And that is Richard Taylor. Richard, thanks so much for your time as always.
Peter, always a privilege, never a pressure. And I've enjoyed our previous episodes as well. It's been fantastic. And it's nice to be back on your show again.
Great to have you. And so much to discuss. And obviously follow Richard. There is his X handle. All the other links are in the description. Now, maybe the first thing was a video, a speech in the House of Commons this week. So let me bring that up because it kind of shows where we are as a nation. It's a whole 10 minutes. We're not gonna play all 10 minutes, but let me bring up part of it and then we can comment. This is Danny Kruger, one of the few good Conservative MPs. But here is Danny speaking to an empty chamber.
It is an honour to stand here in this empty chamber to speak about the original purpose of this space, which was a chapel in the Church of England. The old chamber of the House of Commons, on which this space is modelled after the Great Fire of 1834, was St Stephen's Chapel, formerly a royal church, given by the heirs of Henry VIII to Parliament to serve as its debating chamber. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, your chair stands on the altar steps, and the table with the dispatch boxes is where the lectern stood. And I mention this because the link between this place and the Church of England isn't merely ceremonial. The prayers we say here at the start of every day aren't just a nod to tradition. Our democracy is founded on Christian faith. And indeed, this Parliament remains the law-giving power of the Church of England. We in this place have the responsibility to approve or disapprove the doctrine and the rules of the Church. And that is as it should be, because the Church of England is not some private club, just another eccentric denomination. The Church is a chaplain to the nation. And through the parish system, in which every square inch of England has its local church and its local priest, we are all members. We all belong, even if you never set foot in your church from one year to the next, even if you don't believe in its teachings, it is your church, and you are its member. And so when I speak of the Church of England today, I am not speaking about the internal politics of the Anglican sect. I speak of the common creed of our country, the official religion of the English and the British nation, and the institution which, older than the monarchy, much older than Parliament, is the institution that made this country.
We could play the whole, but fascinating speech, and one that you don't normally hear any longer in the House. What were your thoughts as you watched that powerful speech by Danny Kruger MP?
Well, I think the first thing is striking to note that there was hardly anybody in the chamber. I mean, that was quite astonishing for me, given the gravitas of what he was actually saying, that we are a Christian nation and those principles are vital to our identity and our heritage. And, you know, I tweeted earlier that it's a shame that others in Parliament don't think that it's worthy of their time to be part of a debate that establishes us, not just our Parliament, but us as a Christian nation. And I think that is under threat. I think it's been under threat for quite a while because of open borders, because we've been infiltrated by multiculturalism, which in some cases has not been good for the United Kingdom. And I think it's been diluted, really, the Christian message in our country, and parliamentarians are responsible for that. You know, we've got a branch within Parliament right now that are so far left-wing and progressives that seem to think that, you know, Christianity is long gone and forgotten. But let's not forget and remind ourselves that our whole parliamentary system was set up around those moral, principled, and Christian values. And I think it's important to recognize that. And I was absolutely appalled by the fact that there was hardly anybody in the chamber, but I would applaud him for speaking out. And the words that he said, I would absolutely, he has my full support. And, you know, I really think, Paul, that our heritage is vital to our identity. It's so important that we hold on to the values that made the United Kingdom what it is today. And I think a lot of that has been It's been eroded, unfortunately, because we've seen politicians, consecutive governments move away from it and only claim to be a Christian nation when it suits their political narrative.
No, it's so true. And such a powerful speech. The press in the chamber was empty, and something that we don't really see any longer, in terms of politicians holding on to their faith because they don't actually have any faith. But let's move on to Advance UK, and it just fits that we had Ben Habib with us on Thursday, just a few days ago, and you've been involved with Advance UK, and Advance UK has also gone Welsh. Tell us a little bit more about how those in Wales can enjoy the benefits, as Advance UK only coming up to 3 weeks old, but already over in Wales.
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is that, of course, Advance UK is about a one nation state. We believe in the freedom of speech, sovereignty, and equality under the law. Those are the guiding principles and the mission of the party. And, you know, one of the wonderful things about Advance UK and why I got involved in it, you know, my previous kind of political relationships with Reform and Nigel Farage and others, you know, that I've stood in previous elections was because,
All forgiven.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's because I simply saw, and I've been friends with Ben since 2016, actually, when I interviewed him on one of my programs called Rich Politics. And, you know, he has been integral and absolutely authentic on his principles when it comes to what he believes in, and he's a man of honor. I you know, I've spoken to him personally and believe in him and what he's trying to do to save our nation, because right now our nation faces existential threat because we've given powers over to foreign bodies, you know, super institutions, you know, outside of the UK, and we need to reclaim our sovereignty. And one of the most attractive things about this party, Advance UK, is it is so democratic that actually the members get a say. Unlike Reform, where Farage is Reform and Reform is Farage. And, you know, with the way that we've set up Advance UK here in the United Kingdom, and of course, I've been given the task, and I'm really humbled and honoured that Ben invited me to do so, to lead up the party here in Wales. You know, Wales is a different beast altogether. As you can imagine, we have the Welsh Parliament, the Welsh government here, and the Welsh Labour. And devolution has been an absolute disaster for the last 2 decades. But I think Advance UK offers something different. You know, I think in previous interviews, and one that you did, I watched with our leader, Ben Habib, talking about, you know, we don't need foxes, we need lions. You know, we need people who really believe in our nation, in our sovereignty, and fighting for those things, and our history and our values that have been eroded. And I think Advance UK really stands for that. Now, I'm a patriotic Welshman. You know that, Peter, from previous interviews. And I feel Wales has lost its way in the inertia of what's happening with Westminster. We have a Labour government in Westminster, Labour here in Wales, but they seem unable to work together. You know, in Wales in particular, we have the lowest standards of education under the PISA system. We have the longest waiting lists in our NHS. Child poverty is some of the highest in the whole of the United Kingdom. And so Wales has suffered tragically under Welsh Labour here in Wales. And I think it's time for change. Now, I appreciate that we're a new party and we've got targets to set, and we're looking at 2029 as being the main objective. But I think Advance UK offers something completely different from all the other parties. It is unique. It is different in the way that it's set up. For example, I think Ben mentioned to you that we have a college of members, of which some announcements are going to be made about that. And the college will hold the executive directors to account. And it's more democratic than any other political party that I've ever been involved in previously. And that is why I was drawn to it. And when Ben invited me, I looked at it first, looked at the Constitution, went through it all with my team, and thought, you know what, this is something I can get behind, because the mission statements, the pillars about nation state and about freedom of speech, sovereignty and equality under the law are things that are very, very special and dear to my heart, given the two-tier justice system that we're seeing right now across the whole spectrum in the country.
No, I am looking forward to seeing that grow, and you can I love it, Richard on, because his musical lilt instead of my flat Northern Irish tone. So it's lovely. So I just get lost in that and forget that we have another story. So let me bring up the next one. This is Richard was talking about Wales, but over in Westminster, this was the wonderful stunt that Together Declaration did, shining no to digital ID on the side of Parliament in the middle of London, Together Declaration. And Alan Miller had put, "We just beamed no to digital IDs up on Parliament. They keep trying, but we won't stop. No to digital ID, yes to digital Bill of Rights." And it is, I love the way Together keep pushing this conversation that we need to have, that we need protections and rights in all different areas, and certainly in the digital space, as we are pushed for digital ID. So, I was quite jealous of that picture, Richard. I would love if I'd been involved in shining a message of such importance up there. But no, damn, you've been involved with Together, doing a fantastic. We had Alan on, I think, probably a week or 10 days ago, and this shows the importance of Together Declaration for keeping these issues in the public eye.
Yeah, one of the extraordinary things about the Together Declaration, and one of its strengths, is that it's non-political, apolitical. In basic terms, it's not a political party, and they stand up for the beliefs that I believe in, certainly, and that's to do with freedom of speech, bodily autonomy, all the things that we fought against. And a few years ago, you may recall that we had 360,000 signatories to fight back against vaccine passports and mandatory vaccines for NHS workers. And I was privileged and honoured and humbled to be with Alan and the rest of the team, and Adam Brooks and many others as well, to go down to 10 Downing Street to present the petition, which resulted in an absolute success and the government doing a U-turn on it. So, they've got good credibility. And Alan and his team are phenomenal. I was part of their team and the executive for some time before stepping away, just got involved in other things. But one of the things that concerns me personally is the whole digital ID. This is the nanny state, the Brit card that they want to bring in, which will control what, and your data, and gather information about you, what you're doing, where you're spending, where you're going, where you're traveling. And the tactic that they're using, and it's part of the globalist agenda, is that we're trying to keep you safe. When the government tries to tell you they're trying to keep you safe, you've got to read between the lines of that narrative, because it's not true. And I think what they're doing, this digital bill of rights, I should say, is very important, because what it does, they're trying to push it as a mandatory thing so that people sign up to it. And we know where this is going. It's a cashless society, and I believe it's going to be a cardless society. And most of us are going to end up paying and using these things more and more, which we do currently now. And everything will be on there. All your information will be accessible. And one of the frightening things about the Brit card, apparently even employers can download a free app and they can check out your details, if you apply for a job, that is, and find out all the information about you they can. It also gives these super institutions access to your personal data. And I think that's a very worrying place to be right now. We have biometrics, we have all these things going on. And it's all part of, if you like, I mean, I might sound like a conspiracy theorist here, it's all part of the Bill Gates agenda. It's this globalist elitism that wants to control the populace and control your information and gather and harvest all your information so they can control you, so they can put fear on you and send you messages. And so it's a very concerning thing. So I think what the Together Declaration are doing is an absolutely essential part of what all of us should be getting on board with, and we should support them in fighting back against the digital ID, because we know where this is going. Those of us who are awake to it can see it afar off. I know you do as well, Peter. You've seen it coming down the road like many of us, and it's about controlling the masses, and they're doing it. And of course, I could digress, but AI is a big part of that as well. I'm quite concerned about some of that. There are beneficial parts of it, but there's also some things I'm concerned about. because people then will be able to trace, track, and know your spending habits, where you're going, who you're with, what you're doing. I mean, I don't want people to know my personal business, but this is what the government is set out to do, because they want to know exactly what you're up to. And that is a nanny state, which I will always on that hill die and fight against, because it is not something I believe that government should be involved in our personal and private lives.
We're seeing a massive erosion of privacy, and today I saw in front of one of the papers, Notting Hill Carnival is going to have live facial recognition cameras out. So, of course, another element of this jigsaw of destroying our privacy.
Download the Getter app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Getter.
So don't wait. Download the Getter app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
This was the front page on the Express on Thursday, and I hadn't actually seen it. It was Alan Miller. It was on his post, and this is, they failed to provide what might have helped. Anti-radicalization scheme prevents slam for wrong decisions over Southport and David Ames killers, and it seems to be that actually, because of a fear that they are focusing on the actual threat, which is Islamic terrorism, that they've tried to find other threats, including the so-called far right, which don't seem to exist. But anyway, they've tried to find that bogeyman and taken their eye off the ball. But Richard, this is just another example of the failure of the government, and proves that actually they're not there to keep us safe. They're just there to fail, to fall over themselves, and to find any excuse to make sure they don't face up to the problems we have in our society.
Yeah, I think the mistrust in government is growing exponentially, and that is because of this gap of misinformation where, you know, when a story breaks, we've seen it with the Southport murders and others as well in relation to the story you've just mentioned there. What it does, it causes a suspicion in the minds of people. Why aren't you telling us the truth? And it's because they fear that because of certain ethnicities that may be involved, it'll cause some kind of racial unrest, and so people will take to the streets, which we've seen in Epin right now with the asylum seekers in a hotel, which is breaking, as you know, what's going on there, what's happened there. You know, this is because the government, and we've seen it, I mean, we're off piece steered a little bit slightly, but, you know, with the Afghans and the leaked data information and former servicemen, that their information has been leaked now. It's because the government are not transparent. They have these super injunctions. They don't give us the full facts. And I think the Met Police, of course, and those involved also, not just the government. I mean, law belongs to Parliament. I'm kind of anti-Supreme Court. I think all law should be done through Parliament. Supreme Court is a bunch of left-wing kind of judges. But anyway, that aside, this gap and space that they leave, what happens is that normal people like you and I make up our own kind of judgments about what's going on. And we can see that's being covered up. And what we've seen on the streets in our country, I mean, this is going to become more and more apparent. Now, I'm not an advocate for violence. I don't believe it's the right way. I believe we have democratic levers. But if those democratic levers are failing the people of this country, then I'm afraid that hardworking citizens of this great United Kingdom are going to take to the streets. And they're going to decide we've had enough. We cannot trust politicians. We cannot trust these institutions or government. We're going to take the law into our own hands. Now, that can be a very dangerous thing, but at the same time, it's very important to recognize why that is happening. It's because they leave a space of this kind of, it's nuanced, so they don't tell you what's going on. You know, we need to, the Southport was a perfect example of that. And we were, you know, considered to be far-right thugs. You know, I've been called a far-right thug most of my life, to be honest with you, simply because I believe in sovereignty, putting British citizens first, and putting our country and our values and our history and everything first. That's considered to be far-right. I mean, it's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. Where if I was a Europhile, I'd be amazing and I'd be loved by everybody. But I do think this story in particular you've mentioned, it reveals to us a failing within the government not to give the facts and the details at the relevant time when they need. I know there's due process. I know there's investigations, But at the same time, when it comes to public opinion, it's very important that the truth gets out there quickly so we know. Because what happens with most of these cases, Peter, as you have seen and recognized yourself, a lot of people, and from my experience, statistically, from certain ethnicities, we're seeing a real large growth of this since the borders have still been open, since Tony Blair. I've always said this. People say to me, Rich, you keep going on about Tony Blair, it's his fault. It is his fault. When he opened up the borders in the 90s and we had uncontrolled immigration, which we still have today, and we have ideologies and cultures that are not compatible with our own, that they cannot coexist with us as a sovereign nation, then you're going to have these conflicts. And there's going to be in the communities, Manchester, Birmingham, London, the major cities, we are going to see more and more of these incidences happening simply because of the government's failure to shut the borders. You know, this idea now of one in, one out. No. All out, nobody in. Let's have some breathing space. Our country is overcapacitated. And I've always said this, it's one of my cliches. It's not a question of compassion, it's a question of capacity. We don't have the capacity to deal with the amount of people that are coming into this country, both legal and illegal.
No, and we'll touch on a little bit more on the immigration side, certainly in terms of that Afghan 7 billion to bring in 20,000 odd Afghanis. What could go wrong? Anyway, we'll touch on that a little bit, but this issue about voting, something completely different. This Labour government are adamant to bring in voting for 16-year-olds, seemingly to head off a threat from reform. And this was Chris Rowe's a great post. At 16, we're told 16-year-olds can do anything they want. Well, at 16-year-old, you can't marry, you can't buy alcohol or cigarettes, you can't drive, go to war, get a tattoo, do the lottery, be on a jury, buy a house, get a full-time job without being in some form of education or training until you're 18. But a desperate Labour believe that 16-year-olds should have the vote. And this is just trying to re-engineer the landscape, isn't it, Rich? Although kind of part of me thinks actually the adults have done such a crap job on putting in Stormer. So, yeah, I don't know whether it's playing on both houses. Yeah. But, yeah, I don't know if 16-year-olds are really ready to make that, what we've always seen as an important decision, to actually vote.
Yeah, I put a tweet out about that actually on X, saying that if the adults can't run the country, now you got Keir Starmer turning into teenagers. I mean, look, there's a couple of things here. Firstly, I mean, 16-year-olds. I mean, I've got children. I'm a father of 5 children, and they're not engaged in politics. They were dragged into it because when I stood as a Brexit Party candidate a few years ago, and they were vilified actually, and I had to deal with all kinds of things. But that's politics for you. I think 16-year-olds, and I was watching. The news this afternoon, the ITV News, and they discussed with 5 children in a school in Birmingham, would they vote, that they're 6 when they're 16. And 1 out of the 5 just said yes. The rest of them said, no, we know nothing about politics. We're not interested in politics. We're more interested in, getting on with our lives. And let's be quite honest here. A 16-year-old has no life experience. They don't understand how the world works. They're not engaged in politics unless they've been indoctrinated, which we're seeing in our education system by left-wing teachers and things of that nature. They're not interested in politics. Now, I know there's a big trend on TikTok and other platforms, and Farage has kind of capitalized on that quite a bit, and I understand that. But my issue is this. If you cannot stand as a candidate, which you can't at 16, then you should not be able to vote. That's just my beliefs. I just think if you cannot stand, then you shouldn't be able to vote. Given the fact that some 16-year-olds, we used to have here in Wales something called the Youth Parliament, but the Welsh Labour government scrapped that, and that was trying to help young people engage with politics. My fear here is that if we want 16-year-olds to vote, and by the way, this is a blueprint from Wales because Wales already has this. And Keir Starmer has always seen Wales as a blueprint because Welsh Labour have been in power for over 20 years under devolution. He's thinking, well, if they're doing that in Wales, maybe we'll work in Westminster. I think it's a bit of a faux pas. I think it's going to work against him. I don't think it's quite going to work. Most 16-year-olds are sat in their bedroom on the Xbox, and you've got to try and wake them up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And all they want is a McDonald's. Now, forgive me if you're a 16-year-old because I got a son that's 16 as well, so I'm not speaking ill of you, but I'm talking. I'm talking generally, right? So, I mean, the idea that they understand what's going on globally, with our economy and all that kind of stuff, it's just ridiculous. I mean, I think the whole idea of consent. Now, for me, I would say 18 years of age would be, just leave it at that, shall we? I mean, 16 years of age is no, for me, I just don't understand the thinking. I think Keir Starmer, he's lost the playing field with so many U-turns. He's reneged on so many things in manifesto, and he's just clasping at straws at the moment, trying to find some angles to try to get some kind of like gravitas, so we can say, no, we're doing it for the people. It doesn't wash anymore. People are seeing through his lies. They're seeing through everything he's doing, and he is breaking Britain far more. I mean, I don't know if I can say this. I'm not going to cuss, but listen, he's the word. I thought Tony Blair was bad. This guy takes being a prime minister to a whole new level. And, he has decimated not just the farmers, our pensioners, the economy with the tax rises in national insurance. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, people. We could be here all night for me. But the truth is this, that for a 16-year-old to have an understanding of how the world works, how democracy works, how parliament works, and how bills are passed through. Ask them about a green paper. Ask them about, constant. Ask them. They don't have a clue. And now we're saying to them, you can vote just because you're 16, but you can't buy cigarettes. You can't do this. You can't do that, but you can vote. Why? Because you pay tax. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah, well, we'll see what the debate in Parliament is. But as we have a government with no opposition, zero opposition, I can imagine it being pushed through. Now, someone who is opposition, seemingly the most vocal opposition, heck of a lot more than reform, is Rupert Low MP. And this is obviously, he has got the rape gang inquiry that he has done fantastic work on. Nigel dropped the ball, government refused. Rupert's work has forced the government into addressing this issue. Whether or not that will be of any worth, we'll see. But an e-petition, which is you put a petition, if you get 100,000, it gets a debate in Parliament. And Rupert put this mandatory collection and publication of certain child sexual offender data, including nationality, ethnicity, immigration status, religion, so of the grooming gangs. And it got 100. They put it down, I think, by 2:00. By the evening, it had 100,000. It's got 173. And this is going to be debated in Parliament. But it shows what an individual who actually wants to do some good, it actually is possible, even though he's not part of the system. It is possible for an individual. But again, it's a good news story. And this will be debated. And the cameras will be there. We, the public, can see it. We can attend. I mean, I'll certainly be there to attend. I'm sure you will be as well, Richard. But so this is a good news story, really.
Yeah, I think Rupert Low has shown himself to be one of the shining lights as a parliamentarian. To be honest, he, when he got elected, I mean, he, as you know, decided to give up his salary for charities within his constituency of Great Yarmouth. And I've been following Rupert, and I've spoken to him as well across social media. And I have nothing but admiration for the man. He seems very principled. He's very honest. He seems to be the kind of politician that I want to represent me if I was in his constituency. One of the striking things for me, however, is the lack of engagement from Reform. Yeah. Now, obviously, they did a dirty on Rupert Low, made all kinds of spurious allegations, and they were unfounded. And obviously, that ended in him becoming an independent. He's very close to, of course, our party leader, Ben Habib, Advance UK. They talk regularly. I think that, with Restore Brittany set up now, which is a press group, which you know about, I know you covered some of that story. I think with Rupert and what he's trying to do, it's kind of, for me, and I this is one of the reasons why I left the Reform Party, actually. I'll come back to Rupert, is because they threw Tommy Robinson under the bus. Nigel Farage has said some very, detrimental remarks towards someone who exposed the grooming gangs, and so did Richard Tice, calling us, that lot. Yep. Well, I was part of that lot, And I stood and believed in the Reform Party. I mean, I stood as a candidate for them. I worked relentlessly for them, in elections and campaigned on their behalf and believed in them. But when I seen the way that they treated both Rupert Low and, of course, Ben Habib and others within their party as well, members included, I thought, you know what? They're not as principled and they're not as morally kind of, as they say they are. And so I made a decision, I think it was about 9-10 months ago, I came out with Maya Tusi's program. I made that announcement that I would be leaving the party based on constitutional reasons, because Farage is Reform and Reform is Farage. Without him, there is no party. He's a majority shareholder and, you can't get rid of it. With Advance UK, we are very different. We are democratically run by the college. We can vote people in and out, leaders, vet candidates, etc. But going back to Rupert Low, I have so much love and admiration for him. I think he's an amazing, amazing guy. And I know that, there have been crossovers between ourselves, Advance UK, and Rupert. So, we're 3.5 years out from the next general election. So who knows? Conversations continue. But I think around the whole rape gang inquiry thing, with what the work that Tommy Robinson has done, which he was vilified for, literally. I mean, the mainstream media went for him. I mean, they attacked him. He went to jail. I mean, for something that was a civil issue, it became criminal because of Lord Hamer, the Attorney General, who took it upon himself to think, no, this guy's a bit of an agitator. Let's, slap him into prison. Yeah. I mean, it's a ball rip what's happening. Unless we've got Lord Hamer is in the back pocket of Keir Starmer anyway, because he helped to get Keir Starmer elected, but contributed to his campaign to become leader. Soon as Keir Starmer became leader, what does he do? He appoints his good mate, Lord Hamer, as the Attorney General. So if you can see through all the kind of smoke and mirrors, you can see what's going on. And I think with what Rupert's doing and this petition, coming back to the petition, I think it's fantastic. I think it's amazing. And there was recently a meeting down in London, in Westminster, where he brought the victims together. I don't know if you saw that. But one of the notable things is that there wasn't a single Reform MP that attended that gathering. And that tells you all you need to know, given the fact that Farage had said publicly, stood up in the chamber and said, we will hold a private inquiry into the grooming rape gangs. If the government doesn't do it, we'll raise the money to do it. Did they? No, they did not. It was pure rhetoric. That's all it was.
But Rich, I think you're being a little bit unfair, because Lee Anderson had to go out for a pint. I mean, he did take a picture. So he needed a drink. So come on, you're not being fair to him. He was busy.
Well, Lee Anderson, I know a lot of people like the way he is because he's a working class bloke, just like myself. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt and tie just for your program because, trying to look important, but I am a working class bloke as well, right? I understand that. But look, ultimately, I think what's happening with Reform, for me personally, a party that I believed in, lots of people are seeing through things that implode. And if you look at the local elections, for example, they've appointed, and seen elected a number of councillors who are like, we're going back to the 16-year-old vote. They're like youngsters at 18, 19 years of age with massive budgets, trying to take care of public services, dealing with £5 million budgets. They haven't got a clue what they're doing, and they're falling by the wayside and they're imploding. And I think what we will see, this is my prediction, reading the political tea leaves, I think within the next 2 to 3 years, a lot of people will start to see through what's going on. And look how many MPs they've had. I mean, you've had James McMurdoch go, we've had, Rupert Low go, Ben go, there's turmoil, and they had 5 MPs and they're infighting already. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, let me hold on. Let me bring up 1 or 2 pieces on Reform. Here is Dan Wootton talking about Zia Yusuf, or Mohammed Zia Yusuf, because I like to give him his proper title. Here is a clip from him, and then a couple of stories in the last yesterday, and a story just out as we record this Friday afternoon that just came out. So here's a clip from the one and only Dan Wootton.
What exactly does Zia Yusuf have on Nigel Farage? Now, that was a question being asked half in jest over the last few months, but now I genuinely mean it. Because Yusuf's increasingly dictatorial, bullying, disingenuous, and downright nasty behaviour is now tearing Reform UK apart internally. This is not a personal view of mine, but is rather based on many conversations with party insiders at all levels. And now Zia's misplaced notion that he is the future Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the first Muslim Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, has cost Farage his number one Tory target to join Reform UK.
And let me show you just a story. That was Dan giving 50 minutes. We'll not do all 50 minutes. That was just clip. And here are two stories. Latest blow for Farage. This was Wednesday, as another prominent figure quits Reform UK. And that was Suella Braverman's husband, Raoul Braverman. He has left. I've left Reform effective immediately. And that's because Reform said what the Braverman would not be welcome in the party, and neither would Liz Truss. And then on the right, just before we recorded this, Richard, Reform Zia Youssef apologizes for liking X post attacking Robert Jenrick over Jewish wife. Very strange story, but it does look as though the house of cards that Nigel has built, that Zia has kind of taken control of somehow, that maybe it's beginning to fall down. But yeah, you were mentioning Reform. I just wanted to bring those up because it fitted into what you were discussing.
Yeah, I think, there's an apology gone out from Zia Youssef, isn't there, on X, just about 3 hours ago, or whatever it was, some time ago, yesterday, saying that one of his team had posted on X and it had nothing to do with him. It was an accident. It was an anti-Semitic tweet, and for which he apologizes for. And he goes on to, all this kind of apology stuff. And Dan Wootton has come back and said to him, who has access to your X account? That would be interesting, wouldn't it? I'd like to know that. But I think Zia Youssef has actually not been good for Reform. I think he came in at the start and, he made a massive donation. And within the political landscape, as you know, when you've got some money behind you, you can buy influence. And I think what he's done, he's bought himself into the party. And I think he's influencing the party very strongly behind the scenes. And I think it's to its own detriment. Now, I don't want to speak about his religious beliefs, because I don't believe that, I believe that in the freedom of all religion, except those extremists who push their ideologies and believe that, their religion is the only way. And, and if you don't agree with them, then you should be, gone. But that's by the by. I think that Zia Youssef has been a thorn in the side of Farage's flesh. I think he has had a stick with him. He's had no choice, because if you recall, they built up this membership called the Ticker. Now, I'm going to reveal something to you here, and I've never said this publicly before. I was, up until I said 9 months ago, a member of Reform. I resigned my membership publicly here on the airwaves and by letter and by email. But I am still on their database. They still send me emails, and I assume that I'm still a number on their Ticker. Wow. So when they boast, we got 240,000+ members. The truth is, many of those people have resigned their membership over the treatment of members, over the way things have been run, over the way things, as Youssef has said, remarks that Nigel has made about Tommy Roberts, and the way they've treated Rupert Low and Ben Habib and many others within the party. And let's not forget, while Nigel was off the play-in field, it was people like Ben Habib that kept the party going, and gravitas Richard Tice, who did so also. And I just think that, what we're seeing with Zia Youssef is this character that morphs into something, to try to win and garner the support of the public, if you like. But people are now waking up to the reality that this guy is not good for the party. And the reports that are coming out that you just mentioned there, and things that are being said, this is a businessman. He's not a politician. And for him to be involved in politics, that's not to say that business people can't be politicians. Farage was a businessman himself, as you know, we're in the city's banking and everything else. But I think Zia has made huge mistakes, and it would be detrimental to the party. And to be quite frank with you, I wouldn't trust the guy as far as I could throw him. That's my personal opinion. I think he's infiltrated it for the Islamic votes. We're seeing Farage and Reform move more and more towards the left side of politics, garnering support there. Talking about welcoming Syrian refugees into the country. This isn't the Farage I remember from 2016. I mean, what's happened to them? Do you know what it is? They become part of the establishment. And soon as they're elected, they become part of the establishment, they change. And that's what sets Advance UK aside. We will not divert. We will not change. We will stick to our mission of being a one nation, freedom of speech, sovereignty, and equality under law. And we will not compromise on any of those issues.
Absolutely. And certainly just in the middle of this, I want to say if people want to know what to do, well, you can join Advance UK. I joined it. It's tenner. Join up. Get the numbers up to the 30,000. And Ben said he'll put it into the Electoral Commission. Back what Rupert is doing, restore Britain, be part of that. And make sure you're in London on the 13th of September for it's going to be the most phenomenal free speech event I've been at, and I think it will eclipse the free Tommy rallies we saw in 2016, 2017. This is going to be huge. And when you've got someone like Jordan Peterson coming to speak, Jordan and Tammy Booth, and many others, it's going to be a day. So put it in your diary, 13th. I know Richard will be there, I'll be there, and everybody else will be there who really cares about freedom. So those are three things you can do to the viewers and listeners to actually play your part in what's happening and not stand on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. But there are four more stories. Let's see if we can do like 2 or 3 minutes each of them, which won't do justice, but we'll just touch on them. And it is this awful Dominic Grieve. UK Islamophobia definition, blasphemy law and drag. And frustratingly, I wanted to go to the APPG on this, the all-party parliamentary group on, I think, British Muslims, Islamophobia. I wasn't able to get to it this week, but in this piece, we think is the Times of Israel, I think it was. But if there's one thing British politicians hate more than telling the truth, it's letting anyone else do it. In the end, the UK Labour government, in what might be the most refined form of cowardice since Neville Chamberlain waved his paper in the air, has crossed the Rubicon and unveiled its grand initiative to define Islamophobia. And of course, there's huge fear that, as it says at the top, Richard, that this is a de facto blasphemy law. And of course, you can say what you like about Christianity, and so you should be able to say what you like because truth can defend itself and Christianity is true. Islam seems to need these extra legal protections, and it's quite worrying because you could find many hundreds of thousands of us all locked up in jail because Islam does seem to take offense more easily than any other religious belief.
Absolutely. And we've seen Christian, evangelical preachers arrested on the streets recently across social media, Peter. And it's quite concerning considering we go back to the start of our conversation about being a Christian nation and our heritage and our culture and everything else. And and as Christians, we're tolerant, we accept other religions. But I think when they're given preferential treatment because they're classed as a minority group in the country. Actually, they're not. They're growing very fast. And you look at some of our main cities like Birmingham and Manchester and Liverpool, and it's quite concerning, really, because Islamophobia doesn't exist. It is not just word, not just thing, in my opinion. The right to offend is your right as a human being. If someone wants to offend me, that's fine. It's your human right. You can offend me. Whatever I do with that, that's my choice. But I think when it comes to the whole debate around Christianity and other religions, it seems as if the government are very keen on making Islam some kind of virtue signaling kind of religious organization that if you attack them, then, we've got great issues. I mean, take, for example, Jeremy Corbyn. We're looking at the party that he set in. We have within Parliament right now a Palestinian group, if you like. That's what I call them. Jezbollah, I call them, is a new party that he's going to set up with Sultana. So Corbyn and her, and they're pro-Palestine, which is fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But the issue that I have is that these groups are given preferential treatment because if you speak against them, you are demonized. You are called all kinds of things, Islamophobic, and racist. Here's the thing, the race card doesn't work anymore, does it? Neither does the left or the right, because, we've argued as Advance UK, we're not a left-wing party, we're not a right-wing party. We believe in doing what's right by our nation. And I think what we're seeing with these laws that are trying to push through Parliament right now, it's a dereliction of duty on the government because religion should be practiced freely without fear or favor, that should be allowed to happen. But when people are prosecuted for having an opinion about a religion, that is very, very dangerous ground. And where that preferential treatment is shown is towards Muslims, predominantly in this country. Why is that, is the question. What is the agenda? What's behind it? Because, of course, as I've said, we're a Christian nation. You know, I'm a Christian. I've had all kinds of things said about me. Mind you, I'm not the perfect Christian. I don't think there is such a thing, right? So just for the record, I have to go to my good friend, the bishop, called Bishop Kai, for absolution of my sins on a regular basis. But that aside, you know, why is it that Islam is being kind of elevated to a position that it should not be? Is it because we want to appease, you know, a certain group within our communities because we're afraid of the civil unrest that it would cause? But we're already seeing that civil unrest because of things like Sharia courts that we have in our country that should not exist, because they are not legally binding. You know, we have our own laws, but yet they have separate laws. You know, the arranged marriages, the all these things that they push out there, these are against British law. But yet, you know, we're supposed to, you know, bend the knee or take the knee, as Keir Starmer did with BLM and everything else, and bow the knee to these kind of, you know, these people who think that we should treat a certain religion with more respect than we do our own religion, which is a Christian nation. And
sadly, Nigel is afraid of engaging with this issue, which is another problem that we all have with reform. The big story of the week was this, and let's touch on this. The secret airlift revealed after the Daily Mail's 2-year battle against a super injunction, the government's $7 billion secret airlift as 18,500 Afghans are brought to Britain. There is that, and then I think the debate in Parliament. Let's bring this up. And yeah, so again, Chris Rose, no backbench MP, asked the PM about the Afghan resettlement scheme or the cover-up at PMQ's Prime Minister Question Times at lunchtime on Wednesday. Instead, we had some MP ranting about Palestine. It seems though MPs are completely out of touch. 7 billion, we're never supposed to know. We do know. They don't even talk about it. It seems though they think we're irrelevant, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, the frightening thing about all this is, I mean, I was listening to this story very closely with this leak. I mean, and one of the things that struck me, they had a lawyer on representing the Afghans that have been brought over here under this Rupert injunction. And they're talking about compensation, numbering 5 figures. We're talking billions of pounds. And some of these have gone back to Afghanistan. Now, we'll come to, you know, the kind of Secret Service, because they've been exposed as well on a database leak. That happened last year as well, if we remember. It's happened before, and the MOD. But I think what we're seeing here is we've got these lawyers now that are looking for compensation. We're talking billions of pounds. This is taxpayers' money over a government absolute screw-up. This was under Ben Wallace's watch. Now, I have to say this, to caveat this, because it's very important. I was a big fan of Ben Wallace. I thought because he served our country and he spoke things, I think when his leadership kind of thing was under threat. I mean, I saw Ben Wallace as a potential. I mean, that's how nuts I am, right? But he spoke sense because he believed in our country. He seemed to hold the values. But when you look at what he's done and what's happened over these breaches, that has caused this kind of, you know, furore of not just people being compensated and the government having to pay out billions, but the threat to people's lives as well, including those servicemen and women in our country whose details have been released also. Now, who's going to be held account for this is my question. You know, it seems as if this has been pushed to one side. It's a major, major news story. Mainstream media have given it a little bit of coverage, let's be quite frank. But this is serious. This is so serious. And we're talking about, I mean, I understand we withdrew people from Afghanistan that were serving there on behalf of the British government in different capacities and roles. I get that. It's not as I'm oblivious to that. But now we have an Islamic lawyer, I think his name is Adnan, the group you can get on, it's on my Twitter post. I posted this morning actually, and a video of him as well. talking about compensating those whose personal details have been breached to the sum of 5 figures for each individual. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary we got to this place. And I think those who are responsible, you know what will happen, Paul. It'll go before an inquiry. It'll be years and years and years. And before you know, people forget about it. Nothing's done about it. It's appalling that our judicial system is that poor and that weak. When breaches like this are made, people should be arrested, should stand before their peers, be judged, and subsequently, if found guilty, they should be convicted and put into prison. I sound like a dictator tonight, but that's the reality. That's what should happen, but it does not happen because they've ring-fenced themselves and protected themselves using parliamentary kind of procedures that they've got to say, well, we couldn't say anything. But what about these super injunctions? How many more super injunctions are there? How much more is there information out there that we don't know about, that the government are hiding from us? I mean, I'd be interested to know, because I don't believe a single word that this government tells us. I have no faith in them whatsoever. And that's, again, another reason why I've been pushing Advance UK.
That's true. And super injunctions, we're not supposed to know about the super injunctions. We're not allowed to talk about not knowing about the super injunctions. And it's like Fight Club. You're not allowed to talk about it. But there's so much on the immigration side, and obviously what happened in Epping, that's a whole other side, and I haven't even got that up, but that Adam Brooks has done a fantastic job covering that, so make sure and follow Adam Brooks in highlighting that. But here are 2 stories. We'll just touch on each of them. This is two-tier Keir, two-tier Britain system, and this Alison Pearson, probably the greatest mainstream journalist we have on the UK at the moment. Fearless. And this is Alison Pearson saying Lucy Connelly was denied bail. She tweeted, in jail 30 months, doesn't get bail. But Kashir Bashir was granted bail, now missing. He was convicted of child rape. 3 others in child rape charges also got bail. So a woman tweeting is more of a risk to the public than a rapist. This is two-tier justice. To me, actually, there's no other. It's a perfect example, sadly depressing example, of where we are in the UK.
I mean, this is one of the things that really gets me really angry and makes me lose my, I don't know if I can swear on this channel, but it makes me lose my shit, literally, because I think that what we've seen with our judicial system is beyond two-tiered. It's multi-layered. And the cover-ups and the scandals around it. When you consider that Lucy Connelly is a mother of children, posting something on social media, which she later took down and apologized for and everything else, is still languishing in a prison cell. And we've got rapists and paedophiles who walk freely from our courts because left-wing progressive judges paid off. Some of them are Freemasons as well. They're all part of it. And they're just let scot-free. Take Hugh Edwards, perfect example. Someone from my local area here in Connelly. He was found with child pornography on his laptop. He goes to court, kicked out. I mean, there are countless stories of people, not just from the Islamic faith, as you've just pointed to this story here, but even, white British Caucasian citizens as well. It seems as if there's this huge cover-up, and we've seen with the Epstein files now with Trump. It's another story altogether, right? We'll get there tonight. We won't have time to get into it. There's this cover-up, and these cover-ups, this is why people do not have faith in our political establishment. Because the political elite cover themselves in such a manner, in such a way, that what they say, we don't believe anymore. The people, the populace, most of the people, hard-working, ordinary citizens of this country cannot trust politicians because we hear stories like this on a daily basis. This is a poor woman. You take Peter Lynch, for example. If you remember, he sadly took his own life because he couldn't cope with being in prison for speaking out and, freedom of speech. And yet we've got paedophiles, horrific, committing heinous crimes, who are allowed to walk our streets. We don't deport them. We've got foreign criminals in this country. Oh, don't get me on this. We've got foreign criminals in this country in our prisons costing between 41 to 50 grand a year, taxpayers' money to keep them in our prisons, when the first instance should be deport them, send them back and let them get justice in their own country. And if that is whatever they face over there, because obviously their laws are different, then let it be so. Why are we paying to keep these people in our country? Because we're keeping them safe. We're protecting them from real justice. And it really, really annoys me. It gets me so angry that these people are allowed to get away with this, because it should not be happening. And you know what? I blame this government. I blame Keir Starmer. I blame his cabinet. I blame the Justice Secretary. I blame the Home Secretary. It's their fault. David Lammy, don't get me started on David Lammy. All of them, they are responsible for this. And they should be prosecuted. But the way things were set up, we call it democracy. Is it real democracy that we have in this country? Because if they were in an employed job and took certain actions they're doing now, they'd be sacked, they'd be fired, they would be, they'd be arrested. It's as simple as that. But I get so annoyed when I hear these stories, Peter, as you can probably tell, because there are victims involved. And often the victims, they don't get looked at. They don't get. They become as if they're the perpetrators. No, they're not. These are real victims. There are people's lives being destroyed because of idiots in Parliament and idiots within our judicial system who want to protect these evil monsters, because that's what they are. And I think, with us as a party, Advance UK, I know for a fact, having spoken in length on these issues with Ben and the rest of our team, that these are the things that we will come down heavily upon. We will deport foreign criminals. They do not belong in our country. I think Rupert Low has echoed those sentiments also, because why are we doing this? There are 15,000 foreign nationals in our prison systems, and yet our prisons are overcrowded. It's one of my specialities, because I worked in rehabilitation in prisons for many, many years. So I know a lot about resettlement, rehabilitation. I'm rehabilitated myself, so I understand it. But these are people that are taken off the taxpayer, and we're giving them somewhere to live. It might be a prison, but have you seen how nice our prisons are these days compared to when I was a lot younger? It's completely different. So I do think this is a story that needs highlighting, but it's happening daily, Peter. We're seeing this, and people get really annoyed about it. I was going to say something else. I'm really annoyed about it. My mum, God bless her, she's in her 70s, and every time she's only got into politics because of me, because I watch everything on TV with her, not just mainstream media. And she's written poems about Keir Starmer. She's done all kinds of things. And she's not non-political, but she's waking up. But she's saying, Richard, why are they doing this? Why is our government doing this? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And I think it's a fact that a lot of people are ignorant, or they bury their head in the cement, not the sand, because they don't want it. But we must get involved. We must speak out. We must attend these rallies. We must protest. There is power there is people power. We can make a difference. And I think, to stand by and say nothing is the worst thing, because that's when evil prospers. And I think men like this man you mentioned in this latest report, there's been many others as well, Peter. These are people. I would advocate for castration. That's my opinion. It's a personal opinion. Castration. I'm a bit of a Thatcherite when it comes to certain penalties as well. Should we bring back the death penalty? But let's not go there because of the Christian element. I get all that. I have my own position on that as well. But for certain crimes, when it comes to children and the elderly, I think they should be treated proportionately in line with what they've done. And I think we're not seeing that happen. We're seeing people walk away from our courts, walk away free, given suspended sentences, for example, for assaulting and sexually assaulting young children, or having pornographic images of minors on their computer, and they're walking free. What is going on? But they're teaching this stuff in our schools. Look at the RSE curriculum. They're teaching young children, as young as 3 up to 9 years of age, about masturbation, about, touching themselves. What on earth are we doing to our children? They should be pure and innocent, not indoctrinated with this kind of stuff. And so, I know certainly from my point of view, these are some of the values that I hold dear to my heart. I will fight against as long as I've got breath in my lungs.
Oh, absolutely. I'll just bring up this picture. We'll have no time to discuss it. We'll bring up this picture, and that's where we are whenever school pupils get sent home for wearing a dress. And this is the real mystery about the girl in the Union Jack dress. And this was just a great title. Sent home from school for celebrating her own culture. What was a poor girl supposed to wear? A sari? A burqa? A grass skirt? Interesting question, rhetorical question. And I will leave that with you. Richard, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for giving us your thoughts on always a busy week. It's been a while, and I appreciate you giving us your time today.
No problem. Thank you, Peter. Look forward to seeing you again on another show.
Bye.